Story 1. Hello, I've been taking 2 to 3 hour walks alone during the early morning hours for many years, accumulating probably thousands of hours in total. My reason for these nightly walks no longer exists, so I've decided to stop. I plan to share some of my experiences in a thread, starting with a recent event from a few days ago. I was heading down a path leading to the entrance of a forest. As I approached, I noticed a flashlight moving along the path inside the forest, seemingly searching for something. I chose to wait by the entrance until the person with the flashlight passed. As they got nearer, I could hear a man's voice, presumably talking to someone on the phone. Despite the loud music I was listening to, nothing seemed unusual until, instead of walking past me, he stopped about 4 feet away. It was too dark to see clearly, but I could make out his silhouette and a large German shepherd on a leash. He continued talking, not directly trying to get my attention. I decided to head into the forest, but then I heard him shouting. I removed an earbud and realized he was calling out to me, saying something along the lines of, "It's the police. Take your earphones out and stop walking away." Realizing he had been trying to get my attention the whole time, I turned around, apologized, and answered his questions about my presence there. He explained he was looking for someone, and seeing that I wasn't the person, asked if I had seen a girl around. I hadn't, so after our exchange, he went back into the woods. I walked away and went home after the encounter. It wasn't the most unsettling experience I've had, but it left me with questions. Why was he looking for a girl alone in the dark? And if he was searching for an armed criminal, my ignoring him and walking away could have ended badly. I'm just grateful he remained calm, although I'm not entirely sure he was a police officer. He claimed he was, but I didn't see a uniform, and it was quite dark. I haven't seen anything about it in the news. I just hope the girl he was looking for is okay. My other story is scarier yet less clear. It happened about a year ago in a local park. Despite its reputation for being a rough spot, my many hours walking there have always felt safe, except for this one time. It was 2 a.m., pitch black, and I could barely see beyond a few feet. The only light came from distant street lamps. Standing inside the park, music playing through my earphones, I thought I saw movement far ahead. Focusing, I realized it wasn't in the distance but only about 10 feet away. That moment of realization was intensely shocking, like something out of a horror movie. My heart raced, and I immediately ran back towards the entrance. Shaken, I started walking home, passing well-lit, affluent houses, which felt safer. However, when I looked back, I saw a hooded figure, the kind you'd call a stereotypical roadman here, emerging from the same park entrance and turning in my direction, maintaining the same distance between us. When I started to leave, I noticed the same man was about 10 to 15 feet behind me. It didn't seem threatening, but I decided to be cautious and increased my pace. The street stretches for about 200 feet until it meets the main road. Halfway there, I looked back to see the man was still directly behind me, maintaining the same 10-foot distance. This struck me as odd because I was walking quite fast, yet he kept up. So I sped up to the fastest walk I could manage, keeping this pace for another 100 feet or so until reaching the main road. Upon turning around, the man was now only about 5 feet away from me, closer than before, which was unnerving. At that point, I ran all the way home, barefoot in my sliders, without looking back until I reached my front door. I never saw him again. It might have been a coincidence, perhaps just another late-night walker, but it also could have been a close call with danger. If something had happened, I might have been sharing this story on a completely different forum. Story 2. Over 30 years ago, I had an experience filled with fear that remains vivid to this day. I was a college student, a woman taking an outdoor survival course. The final challenge was a 3-day, 3-night wilderness solo. We were allowed a backpack, an empty canteen, sleeping bag, knife, 6 matches, a rope, a plastic sheet, a change of clothes, extra socks, water purification tablets, a small cooking pot, and a spoon. No food or water was permitted, as part of our training involved identifying edible plants and finding water. After being dropped off, I had to hike to find a campsite. The first task was to place a flag on a tree near my drop-off point for my eventual pickup. I was thrilled, fully immersing myself in nature without a hint of fear, even as night approached. The sounds of the forest were comforting, and not having a tent didn't bother me. I built a small fire and felt a profound sense of peace, sleeping soundly through the night. The next morning, I woke up thirsty and set out to find a water source. I found a muddy stream, let the water settle in my pot, added the tablets, and boiled it to make it safe to drink. The taste wasn't great, but it was hydrating. Everything went smoothly, and I enjoyed my time until the afternoon of the last day when it was time to pack up. After cleaning my camp area, I hiked back to my drop-off spot and leaned against a tree to wait for my pickup. Hearing a vehicle in the distance, I assumed it was my ride. However, a vehicle I didn't recognize pulled up on the dirt path in front of me. The driver was a man I didn't know, giving me an unsettling look that immediately made me realize the situation could be dangerous. My instinct immediately told me that the man was trouble. He questioned me about my presence and whether I was alone. I lied, saying my friends were nearby, packing up. He seemed to see through my lie, but then he left. My relief was short-lived. I heard his car return. Terrified, I ran into the woods to hide. As I concealed myself, I could hear him exiting his vehicle, calling out and searching the brush for me. The fear was overwhelming, but eventually he gave up, the sound of his car fading into the distance. Returning to my drop-off point was no longer safe, so I ventured through the woods, aiming to find the base camp. After what felt like an eternity, I encountered a forest ranger and explained my situation. He informed me that my actions were justified, especially since there had been an incident with a young woman the night before, and authorities were searching for this man. The ranger kindly drove me to the base camp, where I discovered another classmate had a similar unnerving encounter but had managed to deter the man with a brass whistle until help arrived. The takeaway from this harrowing experience is the importance of trusting your instincts, and I have since never camped alone. About a month and a half ago, I had another relevant experience. As part of my fitness routine, I work out 4 to 5 times a week at a small CrossFit gym. The warm-up often includes running outside, along a tree-lined street stretching for about a mile, a perfect setup for our exercises. Despite being a short, more full-figured woman, which doesn't align with conventional beauty standards, I felt this would make me less likely to attract unwanted attention. This assumption proved to be a false sense of security, underscoring that appearances don't safeguard against potential threats. I realized my assumption was incorrect when an unsettling experience happened to me at the gym. On a warm, sunny day, the workout plan included jogging down the road I mentioned earlier. Having run this route alone before, my main concern had typically been the weather, not safety. With my phone and headphones for company, I set out for my warm-up jog. Halfway to the road, a car passed me, slowed down to match my pace, honked several times to grab my attention, and the driver, offering a wide, unsettling grin, waved at me before driving off. Initially, I didn't think much of it, dismissing it as one of the occasional unsolicited interactions I face as a woman during outdoor exercises, so I just increased the volume of my music and continued on my way. However, my unease grew when, reaching the intersection to that road, I noticed the same car waiting at a red light. As soon as the light turned green, the car made a U-turn and came back in my direction, slowing down once more. The driver gave me that creepy grin again, looking me up and down in a way that made me feel exposed. My heart raced, but I tried to shrug off the fear, reminding myself it was broad daylight with other cars around, believing he wouldn't dare to do more. Despite trying to reassure myself, I couldn't shake off the discomfort as I turned onto the road and began jogging. It was disconcerting to realize the man had gone out of his way to return and look at me again. Attempting to maintain my focus, I concentrated on keeping my pace and breathing steady, using my music as a distraction. However, it wasn't long before I saw the same car again, this time on the opposite side of the road, slowing down beside me. This meant the driver had made another U-turn, crossed the intersection, and then turned to follow me in the same direction. The man looked at me with that unsettling grin, saying something I couldn't hear over my music, before speeding off again. At this point, my anxiety escalated. He had deliberately gone out of his way twice to follow me. I became acutely aware of my pounding heart as panic started to set in. Realizing I was just beginning my jog on a road with no buildings or places to hide, and completely alone, I feared he would attempt to pass by me again. Spotting another jogger ahead provided a glimmer of hope. Thinking he might be from my gym, I sped up to reach him, hoping for some semblance of safety in numbers. Despite not recognizing him and suspecting he wasn't a gym member, I was desperate not to be alone. After briefly interacting and learning he wasn't affiliated with my gym, I decided to immediately return there, unwilling to risk being alone on the road with the car following me. His intentions were unclear, but his menacing demeanor was enough for me to not want to find out. As I turned back, the car passed me again, confirming my suspicions that the driver had executed yet another U-turn to follow me, maintaining that creepy demeanor and gaze that made me feel exposed. This experience underscored the importance of vigilance and listening to one's instincts when feeling threatened or unsafe. As the man got closer, I glimpsed something in his lap that alarmed me further, propelling my jog into a run. He sped off, leaving me bordering on a panic attack, focused solely on reaching my gym safely. Despite the gym not being far, the fear of not being able to outrun a car overwhelmed me. In my panic, I turned off my music and called my best friend, who was studying overseas. It wasn't the most logical choice. I should have called the police, but in that moment I needed the comfort of a familiar voice. While waiting for her to answer, I approached the first intersection, and to my horror, I saw the car again, waiting for the green light. Once my friend picked up, her voice provided a slight relief amidst the terror. I tried to stay alert to my surroundings in the car as I explained the situation to her, gasping for air. As the light turned green, the car executed yet another U-turn. My friend's calm instructions to breathe were a small comfort as I neared the gym, now only 400 meters away. Every car that passed caused me to flinch, my nerves frayed from the ordeal. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before. With 50 meters left, a final burst of adrenaline propelled me faster. I reached the gym, burst through the doors, and was immediately enveloped in the familiar, safe space. My anxiety began to ease as the adrenaline faded, but the experience left a lasting impact, a stark reminder of the importance of safety and vigilance. After ending the call with my friend, intending to inform my coach about the harrowing experience, the overwhelming stress and fear culminated in a panic attack. I began hyperventilating, shaking so uncontrollably that I collapsed into a ball on the gym floor, sobbing without care for the onlookers. All I could do was try to convince myself that I was safe now and everything would be okay, promising myself never to venture down that road alone again. In a separate eerie incident in 2017, amidst news reports of individuals dressing as clowns and menacingly wielding knives at night, I was facing my own nocturnal challenges. As a 20-year-old dealing with the constant demands of a newborn, my nights were long and opportunities for fresh air were limited to moments like taking out the trash. One morning, while disposing of the trash next to my back door, I noticed footprints and hand impressions on the snow under my baby's room window. Although odd, it didn't immediately alarm me since my baby slept in my room. However, my boyfriend was deeply unsettled by this discovery. A few days later, around 3 a.m., I heard a sound that resembled more of a screeching howl than a scream. Assuming it was just the street cats, I ignored it. But by daylight, I observed several new sets of footprints that didn't seem to follow any logical path, merely traversing between houses. I dismissed this too, attributing it to the frequent foot traffic from people crossing our yard to reach the houses across the street, known for drug activity. Then, approximately 4 nights later, again around 3 a.m., another unsettling event occurred, reinforcing the need for vigilance and the unsettling reality that not all dangers are as easily dismissed or understood. While feeding my newborn late one night, I heard a dragging noise against the house. From my position on the couch, I could see the back door, which has a window covered by blinds and doesn't seal well because of a wood rod on the frame. I muted the TV, listening intently, and soon, directly at the back door, I saw the silhouette of someone standing at the window, brandishing a large kitchen knife. The figure traced the knife across the window panes before tapping softly on the glass. Frozen with a feeding baby and my phone out of reach in the bedroom, I hesitated to take my eyes off this ominous presence. Compelled by an instinct to protect without alarming my baby or the intruder, I stood and calmly walked into the kitchen, turning on the light. I addressed the figure with a composed lie. "Hey man, I've already called the police. You really don't want to deal with them, so why don't you go home?" Surprisingly, my calm demeanor seemed to catch him off guard. He paused, seemingly weighing his options, then suddenly turned and ran down the alleyway. Nothing similar ever happened again, but the event left my boyfriend frustrated that I hadn't woken him or actually called the police. Story 3. I recently started exploring Reddit and stumbled upon a subreddit that seemed like the perfect place to share a true story of mine. I occasionally dog sit for a family friend who prefers having someone stay at their house with the dogs. Having grown up in a rural town, I cherish the tranquility of the countryside, a welcome retreat from city life where moments of solitude are rare. Their home is exceptionally secluded, nestled in an area so remote that commuting to and from work takes 2 hours, and the nearest town or highway is about a 45-minute drive away. The nearest neighbor lives directly across the street, within a 5-mile radius, offering a semblance of comfort in knowing there's at least one person nearby. However, this neighbor, contrary to providing a sense of safety, has only contributed to my unease. Upon arriving at Terry and Johnny's place, they briefed me on the usual responsibilities: feeding the dogs, watering the plants, and so on. As they prepared to leave, Terry mentioned I should be informed about Steve, the neighbor across the street. John described Steve as harmless despite his odd behavior and frequent drinking, which has led to multiple revocations of his driver's license, leaving him with only a moped for transportation. Despite the laughter, the mood shifted as John showed me where they keep a loaded gun, just in case. Explaining its use was straightforward. Though the mention of a gun in a house so far from immediate police assistance was alarming, it didn't particularly worry me. My upbringing and experience with eccentric locals had prepared me for such situations. Moreover, the presence of 2 protective dogs, trained to respond to a single command, bolstered my sense of security in this isolated setting. Terry and Johnny departed around 3 p.m., and I spent some time walking and playing frisbee with the dogs before starting to unpack my things. As I went outside to retrieve more of my belongings, I heard the neighbor Steve abruptly exit his house, engaging in a seemingly heated phone conversation. His voice was faint, but then I heard him shout, "Where'd you effing go?" The dogs, alerted by the commotion, began to growl softly. I reassured them, "Calm down, boys. It's all right, just Steve, remember. He probably just wants some privacy. Let's go inside." As I continued gathering my things, Steve's voice escalated. I heard him yell, "I do care about my kids," followed by the sound of something hitting the unpaved road behind me, a cell phone. The dogs then became agitated and charged a few feet behind me, barking and growling aggressively. Dropping my belongings, I turned to see Steve at the end of the driveway, about 50 to 75 feet away, just staring. I managed to calm the dogs and ushered them inside, offering Steve a cautious wave, trying to maintain a friendly demeanor despite the situation's oddity and recalling Terry and Johnny's assurance that he was harmless. Steve, dressed in dirty jeans, work boots, a grimy red hoodie, and a red hat emblazoned with a Confederate flag, looked disheveled, with shoulder-length dirty brown hair and a long beard. He took a step forward and asked in a peculiar tone if I was all right. Introducing myself as Pip, dog sitting for the week, I attempted to convey I was fine and ready to settle in for the evening. The dog seemed on edge, a reaction I hadn't witnessed before. After introducing himself, there was a lingering silence, punctuated only by his repeated inquiry about my well-being. His insistence on checking if I was okay felt unnerving, amplified by the dog's unusual behavior and the tense silence that followed. The uncomfortable silence stretched for about a minute, convincing me Steve must be intoxicated. I decided to ignore him and finish unloading my things. As I did, I heard him take another step on the gravel driveway, prompting the dogs to bark once more. Steve remarked on the dogs' harmlessness toward him, praising them as damn good dogs, which